Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. And can you see the screen re-engagement specialist presentation?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Roger Botten for the record. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Student Attendance Advisory Committee at 9 o'clock.
Jason Trevino,
Present.
Carrie Pruitt,
Present.
Lacey Keel,
Present.
Charles Aglabat, Shelley Buchanan.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any public comment?
I received 5 public comment emails.
All right.
Emails received from Jessica Segoviano, Mike Zen, Toby Ibeck, Kevin Ruiz, Roland Tolentino.
All right. Roger Bond, for item 2.2, if you could look over the minutes from March, 2.1, I guess I had to. Look over the minutes from the March 10th meeting. Have any public comments on the minutes?
No public comment.
Any questions? No? I'd like to get a motion to accept the minutes from March 10th.
Jason Trevino for the record. I'll make a motion to approve the March 10th meeting minutes.
Carrie
second.
Pruitt, Isaac.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Well, that passes.
Pardon me, Chair Botten. For the record, Charles Botten joined us at 9:02. Excuse me, Charles Aglabat. It was a long week. Excuse me.
No worries. I got it.
All right, for 2.01 approval, 2.02 presentation discussion on chronic absenteeism data in the Washoe County School District for the 2022 to 2023 school year.
Good morning, everyone. Rochelle Murillo for the record. I'm having some technical difficulties, so I don't have the actual graphs up for you, but I'll send it to you by the end of the day today, so that you can see the visual of chronic absenteeism. So chronic absenteeism this year did fluctuate. Just reminding you what the definition of chronic absenteeism is, it's missing 10% or more of the days that a student is enrolled. So it does fluctuate through the year because it's based on the days that students are enrolled, and it's a percentage. We spent much of the year trying to develop tools and support schools around interventions. Our chronic absenteeism did increase this year, but we won't know final numbers until the last day of school, which is next Wednesday. So we have 3 more days, half days, for high schoolers who are being finals next week, until we know final chronic absenteeism rates. And so we'll be able to finalize those, but they did fluctuate all the way up to about 24%. Last year we were at 22%, so we saw an increase in chronic absenteeism this year. Unfortunately, and again, as in years past, our students that are homeless and our students in foster care had the highest rates of chronic absenteeism. So unfortunately, we did see that increase. There was quite a few things that we did within the children in transition and our foster programming to try to identify students that were chronically absent and provide them some really individualized support. We also looked at our outcomes for formal attendance monitors that we've done for many, many years in this department. Even before I was in this department, we've put students on 20 formal day monitors. We looked at that data, and some of the preliminary data suggests that we need to intervene longer, that 20 days is not long enough to change behaviors. These behaviors, this chronic absenteeism, frequently doesn't just happen this year. It's happened for many years. And so to change some of those barriers that students are encountering, it takes longer than 20 days for us to intervene and change those behaviors. So I'm looking forward to presenting to you at the beginning of next year how we're changing some of the models of how we're intervening with students, refocusing our attendance officers around trying to intervene earlier, supporting our schools around attendance systems and looking at their data regularly around chronic absenteeism. Our children in transition programming is working on some interventions that's specifically targeting students that are homeless. And then I know our foster liaison and Carrie Pruitt have been working a lot around identifying students in foster care that are chronically absent and trying to figure out ways to address some of the barriers that students in foster care are encountering as well. So I'm looking forward to showing or kind of explaining and presenting to you next year what that could look like. And I guess it's not next year, it's next school year. So the next time that we meet, what that kind of will look like in terms of how we're going to try to improve our practice and our outcomes for our students that are chronically absent. Any questions? I'm sorry,
had a
Shelley's got
question.
her hand up. I'm sorry, Shelley, I didn't see you.
That's okay. Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Shelley Buchanan for the record. I had a question. Have you guys been looking into any of the precursors of what happens prior to chronic absenteeism? For example, maybe academic difficulties. Are there any kinds of common threads that you can identify?
Yeah, we've done that, and I will be able to present some of the of that information. We've partnered this year with REL West Ed, who is a national research organization. They are looking at some of the, some of the dynamics that students encounter. We know students that are chronically absent struggle academically. We know that they've often been chronically absent frequently, but we've also looked at kind of broader, some of the predictors. Some of the research suggests that being chronically absent in kindergarten is a predictor of being chronically absent later, and sixth grade is a pivotal time. But West Ed is looking at specifically, some of our larger, our district across, what is the turning point of when students are chronically absent? Is there a grade level? Is there an age? Is there some sort of academic point where students become chronically absent? We also know that students are chronically absent for a variety of reasons: behaviors, academics, transitions in the home, in mental health, drug use, those kinds of things. So it can be hard for us to pinpoint it, but we are looking at it. And so West Ed is going to be digging down into trying to figure out, is there a turning point of when we can predict when students are becoming chronically absent so we can intervene early on before those things occur? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that will be really interesting when that information comes out. I'd be really curious to see that. Are they using your big data resource for that?
They could. They're going to be looking at a variety of different data points, I think. So, yeah.
And that should be next year at some point?
Yeah, they're going to be working on it actually. We've been meeting for a few months now. They're preparing that, working on the methodology around it. So they'll be working on it probably starting this summer. So we should have that data fairly soon, probably in the fall.
Fantastic, thank you.
Roger Botton, for the record, I have questions on the monitor.
Yeah.
On the 20-day, what are we thinking of expanding it to? How long? And typically on a monitor, what percentage of students improve their attendance during that?
What percentage do they improve?
Yeah, what percentage of students improve attendance during
So-
the monitor? Is it effective? How effective is it?
Yeah, well, so right now our data is suggesting that it is not effective. 20 days is not long enough, and we're not seeing an improvement, any significant improvement in attendance. However, when we look at our students in re-engagement who are provided case management much longer than 20 days, we are seeing significant outcomes with them. And also with our SARB students, and we have a presentation later on in the agenda so that you can see some of the changes that students in SARB who receive 45 days of case management are seeing some improvement. And so we're looking at, this summer we'll be looking at that re-engagement data because we are seeing some changes in behaviors for longer case management. And then we'll look at our SARB cases as well to see what do we need to adjust for attendance monitors. We think preliminary that we need to intervene more earlier. So working with students who are approaching chronically absent and at 10% being chronically absent for attendance officers so that we're catching them earlier and we're providing a longer intervention. So possibly 45 days. We need to dig down deeper into our re-engagement and our SARB data to really determine the number of days that we'll case manage. But that's what it's looking at like right now. So at least 45 days of a formal attendance monitor so that we can see if we'll see some better outcomes with our formal attendance monitor and shifting our focus to intervening earlier on.
Any other questions?
Carrie Pruitt for the record, sorry. I I'm not sure there's a great answer for this, but I had a conversation with a worker yesterday regarding a student that we are providing services to who's not in our custody, who's most likely certified or should be certified as CIT because both students in the family, their family has been, moving around, living in motels and these kinds of things. And so this conversation is one of maybe several that we do have. And what happened with these two kids is it was 10 days kind of no call, no show, I call it, where the parent doesn't call in, attendants probably can't get a hold of them, and then they're unenrolled. So it's tough because when kids are unenrolled, then they kind of disappear. And they're hard to locate again at times, I'm sure. So I guess the question is, when these kids, after the 10 days, what are the efforts? And I'm sure the schools are trying to reach the families. Like this mom, her phone number was the same, but address obviously not because she's kind of been homeless and moving around. But that's a tough one because our kids just kind of are out there somewhere. So I kind of just want to follow up on what that process is.
Yeah, you're actually going to get a formal presentation later on in this agenda on re-engagement specialists and what we're doing around students that we consider vanished. So they're the students that you're talking about that by our state, our Nevada Department of Ed requires that we withdraw students when we don't hear from anyone at 10 days, called 10 days whereabouts unknown. Or if we're hearing from students, maybe a parent's calling in, but we have 20 consecutive days, we have to withdraw. That doesn't mean we can't re-enroll right away as soon as we find students. So you're going to get a more formalized presentation later on in the agenda that will tell you exactly what we're doing for students who are withdrawn and don't enroll anywhere else.
Thank you. Yes, the re-engagement specialists are a team that we really rely on. So I wasn't sure if they are engaged every step for all kids who are unenrolled at 10 or 20 days. So that's good to hear. Yes. Thanks.
Any more questions? We'll go on to 2.03, presentation discussion on the progress of the middle school engagement program for the 2022 to 2023 school year.
I'd like to welcome our attendance coordinator, Doug Taylor.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Doug Taylor for the record. The Student Attendance and Engagement Grant started supporting schools back in February of the 21-22 school year. I've presented to this committee about them before. That grant was extended on January 2nd of this year to include the end of this year and then all of next year. So we do have funding in place to support that continued program through the end of next school year at this time. The assistant for Shaw and Mendive, we lost during the transition period, and so we had to hire a new person. That person started on February 27th. The same was true of the Clayton and Cold Springs assistant. We lost that person while funding was in flux a little bit. So we hired a new person for that who started on March 6th. So we're now fully staffed across all 6 schools that are part of that grant. The one for Swope and Billinghurst we hired last year in April, and she has continued on till this point. So we're now fully staffed with all of our schools. The assistants have been working on reconnecting with students that their predecessors had been case managing. We had transitioned those students to site-based case managers during the interim, but the level of support that those site-based personnel were able to provide was not the same as a dedicated assistant, and so they've been working on transitioning those students back onto their caseloads, and then also expanding their caseloads with new students who have been identified in the interim. One of the components of the grant was a robotics program using Vex Robotics that was wanted to start at all 6 schools. We purchased the kits for that. All the assistants went to training, and we included teachers from all the schools that were interested in facilitating those programs into that training. And all 6 schools now have successful robotics programs up and running. We expect to be able to continue to expand those next year. In fact, there has been interest indicated from 4 of the 6 schools. Based on a question from the funder on did we want to expand that in going even larger with, with that, potentially purchasing additional kits or doing additional training with staff. We're not sure exactly what that looks like yet, but we expect that program will be expanding. In terms of results, it's a little bit tough to attribute specific results just because of the fact that it's only been running for a little over a year at this point, and we did have flux in funding, so we've had staff turnover and other extenuating factors that make it a little bit tough to see exactly and attribute exactly what results are happening because of what. But we can say that 4 out of our 6 schools are below the middle school average for chronic absenteeism currently in the Washoe County School District. So while we do have 2 schools that are a little bit above what chronic absenteeism is across all middle schools, 4 of our 6 are below. One of them is significantly below. One of ours is actually one of the top 3 schools for chronic absenteeism in the district, meaning it has the lowest percentage of chronically absent students. When we look at average daily attendance, which is another way to measure whether students are in attendance or not, so we look at chronic absenteeism, which, as Rochelle mentioned, means that students miss 10% or more of their enrolled days. And we know we have chronically absent students at every school in the district. The other metric we can use is average daily attendance, which is what percentage of students are in class at school on any given day. And all 6 of our schools, actually, that number is over 90%. So that's really a good indicator, I think, that says that yes, we do have chronically absent students, but we also have more than 90% of students at school every day. Right now, the assistants, because we're kind of coming towards the end of the year, we're working on transition plans, both for our students that are going to be coming into middle school from the elementary feeder schools. And so the assistants have gone to visit all of their elementary schools, introduce themselves and check in kind of with those students. They've also met with counselors or administrators at all of their elementary schools to try to get an idea of who are the students that maybe had some struggles with attendance in elementary school, so that they will be students that we can start serving right away as they come to middle school. They've also written letters that are set to go out in July to all of their incoming students from all of their elementary feeder schools, just welcoming them to school, telling them that we're excited to see them next year. We've put those together. The assistants don't work over the summer. They're 9-month employees, but we put all those letters together. We have them all set to go, and we'll be putting those in the mailroom with the intention of them going to students and families in July. So it's kind of that middle of the summer time when students are maybe starting to get a little anxious about, oh, middle school's coming. They'll get this letter that's meant to kind of encourage them and tell them, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you here next year. The other thing that they're working on is for outgoing 8th grade students that are transitioning up to the middle school. They've met with those counselors at the high school to talk to them about the students that they served at the middle school level, let them know just a little bit of information so that those counselors will be in a good position to be able to continue to support those students as they transition to high school. So we don't have students that were receiving, extensive supports all through middle school that then don't get anything at the high school level. We wanted to make sure that didn't happen. We were going to be able to have them on radar for those people. Again, we talked with the funder recently about the possible expansion of the robotics program, and so we do have schools that are interested in that. So I think that's where we're going to go in the immediate future next year. We have some funding set aside in the grant to be able to support the possibility of either a showcase event or a competition style event. We haven't totally decided or designed exactly what that's going to look like, but where we can bring our 6 schools all together that have all been working on robotics and let them all kind of showcase exactly what they're doing. There's been some interest on the part of the students in turning that into like a sumo robotics competition or like a BattleBots style thing like you see on TV. I don't know if we'll go that way with it or not. I'm kind of deferring to our robotics teachers, who are the experts in how these robots work and what they can and can't do in terms of designing that. But we do have transportation funding set aside to be able to do that next year. Any questions that I can answer for anybody about the middle school attendance program?
Yes, I had a question. Shelley Buchanan.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I'm curious from the feedback that you guys are getting from students, what kind of things are most effective at getting them engaged at the middle school level, and are principals at these schools looking at the student climate surveys at all and using that information?
So to answer the first part of your question, it's very dependent upon the student. One of the strongest factors that we have found is when students feel that they have good connections at school, both good adult connections and good peer connections. And so that's one of the things that our prevention assistants really try to work on, is making sure that students feel welcomed and accepted, and that they have an adult, at least one adult, and they have more than one, of course, because we all know how much teachers care. But that students really know that they have at least that one adult that really cares, that they're there every day and is going to be checking up on them. So building those relationships is one of the strongest factors. And then we also try to facilitate good peer-to-peer relationships through some of the other activities that are funded through this grant. You know, we have things like garden clubs or rainbow clubs or athletics types clubs. There's all kinds of clubs that are funded and supported through this grant. And so supporting those kinds of activities also gives students a feeling of connectedness to school. And we have found that that's one of the strongest factors that we can facilitate in terms of getting students engaged with school. With regards to the climate survey, yes, absolutely. Principals, I would make the case that principals at these 6 schools and at every single one of our schools absolutely look at their climate data and try to take action to make their school climates welcoming and conducive to learning for students.
Yeah, and it would be, I think that maybe tracking potential changes over time on feedback from students using those surveys, that might be a good data points to back up programs and changes in the schools.
Certainly.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you. Sorry, next we have 2.04 presentations from re-engagement specialists on case management and supports provided to students.
Okay, I'd like to welcome up our re-engagement specialists today. They're going to introduce themselves. I do want to give you a little bit of background on how we even have re-engagement specialists in our district. Way back in 2011, and some of them have been working in re-engagement since then. We got a fairly large, Lacey knows about it, a fairly large high school graduation initiative grant within our district, and we created re-engagement centers. And the primary focus of re-engagement is to find students. Initially, it was high school students who had dropped out of school, and they considered it vanished. So they're not anywhere. They didn't re-enroll somewhere. They didn't move. They're here still in Washoe County, but they were not enrolled in school. And the goal was to find them and to essentially re-engage them, find them a way to get back into, sometimes that was Redfield Academy, sometimes it was their zone school, sometimes we did credit recovery within the re-engagement centers, so that we could get them graduated, whatever that looked like for them. And, all students have a different path to graduation. And so it allowed us that flexibility to really work with students and re-engage them. That particular grant sunsetted, but our district chose to continue to fund through general funds these positions. So we have 6 re-engagement specialists. A few of them are here today to present to you. And we continue on today with working with students who are no longer enrolled. That has extended down into middle school and elementary school. And so they're going to talk to you today a little bit about what re-engagement looks like today. So without further ado, re-engagement specialists.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Carlos Bolanos. I have Sparks High School, Reed High School, and the feeder middle and elementary schools.
Hello, everybody. Brenda Martinez. And as you guys can see up there, we do have a chart up there so you can kind of follow along with us. And I take care of the Spanish Springs, Galena, and Incline area.
Good morning. My name is Angie Cisneros for the record, and I am over Hug, North Star, and the feeders.
Good morning. My name is Amparo Cabral, and I am assigned for North Valleys area and feeders.
We also have Marlon, who may be joining us today. He's over Damani, and then we just hired last Friday a new re-engagement specialist to replace the vacancy under TBA, which is McQueen Reno High School. Vanessa Jaramillo will be joining us in about a week, so we'll be fully staffed at 6 re-engagement specialists.
Next slide, please.
Carlos Bolanos for the record. Our initial process, basically, re-engagement specialists work with students who have been withdrawn from Washoe County School District, students who have been unenrolled from out of the county, out of the state, and out of the country. We get referrals from community agencies. Some of the main examples are Human Services Agency, Juvenile Services, local law enforcement, and Washoe County School District registrars, secretaries, administration, and staff. Once a student has been referred to us, we contact families to assess their needs and barriers that are preventing students from enrolling and engaging back in school.
So re-engagement specialists work with students who have been withdrawn from Washoe County School District, students who have been is this the next slide? Sorry. Once a referral is received, we attempt to contact students and families by phone, email, or home visits to set up an initial meeting to discuss educational needs and other services that the family may need. During the initial meeting, we discuss along with the family what educational placement is better suited for the student, whether that would be re-enrolling into the zone school or an alternative setting to help meet the student's needs. Once an educational plan has been determined, we then arrange meetings with zone schools or the educational setting chosen by the family to transition the student back into school.
Next slide, please. Some of the supports engagement specialists provide are, once the student is enrolled in school, we establish long-term goals for students and connect them to wraparound services to ensure family stability. Some of those things are we do our direct case management on an ongoing basis to students, monitor dropped Vantage reports from assigned schools, and some of those reports can be run through the big database or Infinite Campus. We act as an advocate for students and families, mentoring with students, monitoring of enrollment, home visits, and some of those home visits, basically, we try to make contact with them at the home, by phone, email. We call basically all the phones that are listed on Infinite Campus. And in past, we've also used social media, Facebook, to try to get a hold of them that way. Limited transports when necessary, and some of those transports, are to Job Corps, Rise Academy, Northern Nevada Literacy, TMCC, Project 150 for clothing, Jen Evans for student parent appointments, doctor's appointments, Washoe County Health District for student immunizations, Catholic Charities to get food, vouchers to pay for student IDs so they can be able to get a GED or a high set. And we provide direct services to FRC and other communities, agencies.
Brenda Martinez once again. So we participate in school meetings. So these school meetings, it depends on the school. So we'll attend their regular attendance meetings, whether that's biweekly or weekly, however the school would like, just so we can also provide updates on our current caseloads, because I know that schools and principals in particular do want to know where their cohorts kind of sit for the graduating class. And then we also, as a program, we intensively case manage around 400 families, but that's just strength-based case management services. That does not include the thousands of families and referrals that we do get from the community that may only require 1 to 2 point contact with them. And what that looks like is maybe a family just needs a simple ride, for example, to get to RISE for the student to take a placement test. It may include that the family doesn't have money to pay for this placement test at RISE, for example, and we'll go ahead and provide that as well. Our program does pay for certain services that may be educational barriers to these students as well. And we also maintain case notes that are separate on a SharePoint within our intervention department, just in case if one of us were to leave the department, the next person can definitely follow up. We also have our notes in the re-engagement tab in Infinite Campus. So if you guys are ever on that, if you want to see what students we're working with. All of our notes are pretty detail oriented, right? So if we have any communication with any parents, schools, or other community agencies, we do document everything so everybody could be aware of the situation that is happening. And then also just to add on, we do work year round. And so more specifically in the summer, what we do right now is once we get our non-grad list, we'll focus on that list to try to make sure to get them into alternative setting where they can possibly graduate. And then also just the dropouts or seniors that have just fallen out, try to also just get in place somewhere. As well as with middle schools, for example, if they have some sixth graders that haven't enrolled, we want to make sure that we get them enrolled into sixth grade in the middle schools, because once they do drop from our elementaries and middle schools and they don't enroll, for example, in the middle school or in the high school, we do lose track of them. So we always try to make sure that they have a line of enrollment for that as well. In the fall, we do focus on our no-shows, so we do try to locate them whenever we can for that, and also just assist our registrars in maybe sending some records requests, because I know they get really overwhelmed during the fall when they get so many requests from school, so we'll assist on doing that as well to help them a little bit. During the spring, we like to focus on our seniors, the ones that are off track and maybe not be graduating, so we can possibly get into a better placement to better suit their needs. And yeah, and the next slide. And then just any questions that you guys may have for us.
Carrie Pruitt for the record. I just want to thank you all for everything you do. I know there are 6 of you and you have a daunting task, and you can't get them all, right? So I appreciate it. I know workers from our agency work with you guys all the time. I have a question on, and this might be like a policy question, but in particular, this case I was referring to earlier, these kids are in kinder and 3rd grade, and they were enrolled May 2nd, so over a month ago. And so is there like a policy regarding referrals for when schools refer to re-engagement?
Yeah, so every school has a re-engagement specialist assigned to it, even elementary schools. With kindergarten, it's a little tough because they're not mandated to be in school until they're 7. So we may not get a referral for a kindergarten student that's 6. We will next year because that just changed. But so for right now, we might not get a student that's younger than 7. And they may have gotten the referral, but again, there's 6 of them. And so they may not have gotten to it yet, or it is best practice, is not policy to refer to us. So it's a matter of just making sure because we do have registrars and attendance clerks that turn over, it's a training thing to make sure that they know we're here to help them out when they need that support.
So there's no like time frame. If a kid's been gone a certain amount of time, they're not like required to send.
Obviously, we want the referral as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Go ahead, Shelley.
Yes, and I'm not sure if you would know this, but maybe people have seen this or not seen this, but is there what percentage do you think, especially of like the high school kids that need these services, how many of them have been suspended? I'm wondering if that plays into this at all.
Yeah, that's a good question, Shelley. I don't have that data. We can look at that. There is definitely a correlation between out-of-school suspensions and attendance. But if we're looking specifically at re-engagement and the students that withdraw or drop out of school and how many of them had out-of-school suspensions, I suspect you're right, there is a correlation. We'd have to look at that and drill down on that data. We don't have that available to us at this moment.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just thinking of how the law is changing and potential things to be aware of in the coming school year.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. That's a good point.
Roger Botton, for the record. I would be curious to see if there's any data on students who are retained, held back, and if that increases attendance issues or dropping out in this case.
Yeah, we could definitely look at that. I suspect that there is a connection, Roger, but we would definitely have to look at that data to see of our students that are in re-engagement, how many had been held back. We have previously, not recently, but we have looked at re-engagement students and the demographics of them, and the vast majority of them were deficient in credits. and struggled academically in math and English.
Roger Botton again. I'm specifically concerned I think, trends, especially within elementary, that these are habits or whatever. A kid feels that if he's been held back or retained, that maybe he isn't going to be successful, and that leads him to dropping out or increased attendance issues. I know there's a lot of research that says that it's probably the case, but I'd like to see what locally and this, you know, in our district, if there's numbers on that.
Sounds good.
Carrie Pruitt, for the record. I just to tag on to Roger's comment, from foster youth, from a child welfare perspective, I can say that kids that have been held back, kids that turn 18 in their junior year and early senior year, it's hard to keep them engaged. And then throw in some high risk factors like being in foster care and all of those things. I would suspect they're very related, and maybe not until they get older, but when their peers are graduating and they're kind of may already be behind and credit deficient, it's real hard to keep them engaged and get them across the finish line. So not impossible.
Yeah, I guess I'll add too, Carrie, just to your point, we saw probably, and I'll let re-engagement specialists chime in if they feel like this is true, that that we saw an increase in students leaving school because, especially during the pandemic, they had to work to help families meet ends meet. So especially the older students who just need to they feel like they need to help the family, so they're working. And so we saw a big increase. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, Carlos Boano's here for the record. That's one of the challenges we face every year. Once this year starts getting to an end, we see a lot of seniors who are already 18, and they're just close. They're like a credit, to graduate, and they're just like done. They're 18, and it's like my responsibility now is to work. And there's some that we are able to save and engage back, but there's others that they'll move out of state, out of the country, and things like that. And it's like, it will count against our graduation rate, and we're like, it was so close. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. We'll move on to 2.05, presentation discussion on final student attendance review board, SARB numbers and outcomes for the 2022 to 2023 school year.
Okay, I have two more staff members coming up, Anna Lamelli and Hector Garcia. We have finished our student attendance review board hearings for the year. We did book out this year, so unfortunately we weren't able to see all of the referrals that we got because we ran out of time. But they are going to present to you what did it look like this year, how did it go, and introduce themselves. So welcome.
Hello everyone, Hector Garcia for the record. So this was my first year as a re-engagement facilitator working with students, SARB students. I had worked previously as an attendance officer. I did that for 4 years, and as a family engagement for 7 years. So I really enjoyed doing the intense case management with the students this year, and I felt privileged to do that.
Good morning, Anna Lamelli for the record. I am actually fairly new to the re-engagement facilitator position. I was previously with my colleagues, a re-engagement specialist, but I'm definitely looking forward to contributing in the areas of student engagement and guardian engagement, as well as professional development. I am new to the re-engagement facilitator position, but I've been with the district for over 21 years in different capacities. And I will continue by to explain some of the goals and objectives of the re-engagement facilitator, one of those factors, and the factors contributing to the referral. So some of the goals and objectives are to identify and remove barriers to school engagement and attendance. We provide intense case management through resource referral, mentoring, and advocacy. As a re-engagement facilitator, We will case manage students who have been referred to the Student Attendance Review Board or the Elementary Student Attendance Review Board. And we will case manage for 45 days, in which the objective is to identify those barriers contributing to missed school and work with guardians and school staff to increase their participation. The re-engagement facilitator also supports school staff in strengthening capacities to address attendance issues, increase student engagement, and provide training for school-led attendance interventions using each school's existing MTSS framework. Another one of our goals is to bridge communication gaps between parent, school staff, and community resources. Unfortunately, many of the families we work with have had a negative experience at some point during their students' school career, and we work really hard to bridge that gap. And now I'm going to turn it over to Hector. He will go over some of the data for the 2022-2023 school year.
Hector Garcia for the record. There is a little graph up there that Anna and I ran through the cases that we had. So we had 113 cases that were referred to SARP this year. 78 of those, the cases have been closed, but 35, they actually still open. We're still working with those cases, so we don't have the data for those 35 cases. But based on the data that we have up there, when we first got those cases, the pre-SARP, eSARP, the percentage was 50.09% when they came to us. After the 20 days of SARP, eSARP, the percentage went up to 54.82%, and we closed the case with 51.94%. So those are cases, all of them, the ones that improved and did not improve. However, though, I do have the data for the ones that improved, which it was 49% of the students improved attendance, and we went from 47.28% when we closed the case at 62.63%. That's about 16% of those students that did improve. Again, this data shows everyone, the ones that improved and not improved, but these ones are the 49% that improved. They improved 49%. 16%. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Roger Botton, for the record, do you have that breakdown by grade level? Is there a difference between those?
I did broke that down by grade level, and it shows that, for instance, high school they only improve by like 1%, but middle school by 5%, and elementary by 4%. We still see the challenges with high school, and one of the things that I see that Anna will talk about it, but it's within the high school, there's a lot of suspensions, and as you know, suspensions counts towards chronic absenteeism, and unfortunately, when students are suspended, then those days we can't take back because we can't work with the student while they are suspended, meaning that we cannot intervene because the suspensions they are at home, and we can bring them back to school until the suspension is over. Any other questions?
Carrie Pruitt, for the record. I think that the increase in-school suspensions should help that. Right, they're still counted when they're at school but suspended. They're still there, right? So, based on changes in legislation and other things, I'm seeing, at least for our foster kids, they're allowed to stay at school and while they're suspended, depending on whether or not there are safety concerns. But I think that is helpful. And they're in a safe environment, and they're at school, and they have an opportunity to learn, perhaps separated from their peers as they should be. But I think that's just a tiny little thing that helps.
It does help because when the students are in school suspension, those absences does not count, right? It's because they are at school, but they're not like in every classroom. So it does help with the data when they are actually suspended, but they stay at school. And Anna will speak a little bit about the challenges that we have seen.
Hector, can I interrupt you just for a minute? Shelley has a question. Go ahead, Shelley.
I should have been aware of this, but I didn't know that when kids are suspended out of school, that those dates count against their attendance rate. Is that a state law? Is that a district thing?
Our
Who
federal
made that rule?
Shelley, our federal definition for chronic absenteeism is that
Oh.
all absences are unexcused absences. Our state is a little more lenient, but so out of school suspensions count towards chronic absenteeism.
Okay, so it's a federal law we have to abide by.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and I will speak about some of the challenges that we have seen through SARP.
Anna Lomeli for the record. I also wanted to add some thoughts to that graph. The graph does not reflect the many families we've supported to keep out of homelessness, the credits recovered by some of our high schoolers, the many referrals and transportation events that have happened throughout the school year as well. So I just wanted to add that to that. Some of the challenges that we see are that are affecting student attendance are, like Hector mentioned, suspensions, parent or guardian disengagement, substance abuse, transiency, and undiagnosed mental health concerns, and the lack of alternatives where a student can seamlessly transition without having to wait for a new term to initiate. So those are some of the main factors or challenges we see. And now Hector will talk a little bit about some of the community resources we refer our families to.
Yeah, Hector Garcia for the record again. So we partner with different agencies with the intervention department, and some of them we work with this with communities in schools, family resource centers, children's cabinet, Solace Care, Solace Street, Nevada Hopes, the Eddie House, Awaken, the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, the CAT program, and also Project 150. I would say with Project 150, we bring a lot of our students who are in need of clothing and shoes. This year, I brought about 25 to 30 students to Project 150. And actually, that helps a lot also to connect with the students when we provide these kind of resources. And we're just trying to figure out, when we work with the families, what the needs are, and we try to support the needs in every area. And that's why we partner with all these community agencies to support our families. Because at the end, I know that attendance is important, but also the other things that they also face are important. If we are able to support them with that, then we see that attendance could improve as well. Any questions?
I had a quick question. Shelley Buchanan again.
Go ahead.
Yes, you said that students that transition to an alternative educational setting, that they have to wait till a new term to transition. Can you explain what that means and how that works?
Anna Lomeli for the record. Sometimes when the school setting is not working out for a student, we refer them to an alternative option. Sometimes they are at capacity and the student will be placed on a wait list, which then interrupts their regular attendance.
So Shelley, just to add, so students in their zone school have a right to enroll at any time, but at alternative settings, that's not always the case. So let's say a student transitions to an online program or they transition to a charter school. Those are application processes sometimes, and so they do have to wait. So the only time that they can enroll today is at their zone school. Does that make sense?
So things like the Rise Academy or, I'm sorry, is it Innovations? That's the district alternative school?
That is, yes.
Yeah, so that they wouldn't have to apply to that, correct?
Innovations, they do have to apply, and there is a process of enrollment. A student, especially if they're under 18, cannot just enroll at Rise. There's a process that they have to go through for approval with the principal and our leadership.
So there's no way that, so for example, if a kid is not attending school, but they need to just finish this class, there's no way to just quickly say, okay, get online to Teams and access the work and have somebody that's a facilitator to make sure that they understand the lessons and they are completing them?
So we don't have the only distance learning program that we have, online program we have in the district is through North Star. And so sometimes schools try to be flexible, but students have to be enrolled in their zone school to do a temporary distance learning program. We don't have an option of distance learning at a zone school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just thinking of ways that, it could be resolved like in the interim between that waiting period if they have to wait, but they're not enrolled in a school or for whatever reason they don't want to attend their zone school or another school. How can we keep them, earning those credits, especially for those high schoolers falling behind, having some kind of, I know in other districts that I've worked for a long time ago, we would go out and we were working with kids to get their GREs, and that would be pretty quickly after they were dropping out. We would just go to their homes and make sure that they were completing those credits.
Yeah, I think schools try to be flexible. It's just a kind of it's a little bit of an enrollment snafu, I think, of trying to figure that kind of thing out. So we've gotten better at it and trying to be creative, but it's still a little bit of a challenge around those things.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that sounds like something that maybe could be addressed somehow to make it a little bit easier on everyone.
Right.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, well, thank you. I'd like to move on to sort of closing items 3.01. Ask for any public comment.
I have no further public comments received.
All right. 3.02, our next meeting will be held September 8th of 2023. And at this time, I would like to adjourn our meeting at 9:54. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good summer. See you in September.
Thank you. Have a great summer. Bye.
Thank you.